Good evening and welcome to the December 5th Board of Selectmen meeting. I ask we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Before we start the meeting, I want to recognize Boy Scout Troop 338 for attending and watching the action tonight, and thank you all for attending. It's a nice full house. We'll start with the reading of the agenda. We'll go over previous meeting minutes. We'll then move on to community relations announcements and open forums. We'll then move on to appointments and resignations, of which we have one, an appointment for the Civilian Traffic Commission. We have one scheduled appointment. That's for 6:45 with the fire department for the pinning of 2 new firefighters and 2 promoted captains. Under new business, we have 2 items. One is a town clerk for new voting equipment, and number 2 is surplus equipment for the highway department. Under old business, we have 2 items. Number 1 is Gulfwood Road update, and number 2 is the fire chief hiring process. Then we'll move on to committee reports, board of selectmen policy reviews, the student select persons report, then the town administrative report, and finally, any other business unknown at the time of posting. And our next regular meeting will be December 19th. And with that, I will move on to announcements. A couple announcements. Pet Pictures with Santa will be held Saturday, December 9th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Cornerstone Bank, 2 Center Depot Road in Charlton. Join Focus and Cornerstone Bank for our annual holiday photo op. Santa and one of his elves will be there to pose with your pets. Refreshments for humans and treats for your furry family will be served. Focus will gladly accept donations for your pets' photos. Dogs must be on leash. Cats also must be in carriers. The town hall will be closed on the following days: Monday, December 25th, Monday, January 1st, and Monday, January 15th. Happy holidays. The Charlton Rays Foundation presents Taste of the Towns. It's that time of year again. Saturday, January 27th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at St. Joseph's Church Hall on 10 H. Putnam Road Extension. You can purchase tickets at the Charlton Senior Center or Cornerstone Bank in Charlton. For more information, please call 508-248-2231 or 508-868-5289. The 2018 dog licenses are in. They are available in the town clerk's office or through the mail. Applications are also on the town's website, townofcharlton.net. Is there any other announcements?
Chair.
Yes.
There are 2 other announcements. At Shepherd Hill on December 10th, the music department will be hosting a holiday spectacular shopping vendor fair from 1 to 5 o'clock. And Friday, December 15th and Saturday, December 16th at 7 p.m. Shepherd Hill will be putting on the play What I Want to Say But Never Will, and tickets will be sold at the door.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. If you want more information, is that on the school's website? Thank you, Ms. Gronowski. Mr. Swenson.
Not a new announcement, just a comment. I'm going to do my annual plug for the Rays Foundation and the Taste of the Towns.
Please do.
I've been fortunate and honored to be on the board of Rays since it was founded. It is a great, great organization. Rays stands for Residential Energy Assistance for Seniors, and this group is the Rays Foundation is a 100% volunteer group. Every penny raised goes to help Charlton seniors with heating and occasionally cooling needs. It's, we live in this kind of bucolic little town out here, and it's hard to think that sometimes we have people in this town that have to decide whether or not to pay the electric bill or buy a tank of oil or go get their medicines down at CVS. And again, 100% volunteer group is the Rays Foundation. Every single penny raised goes to helping Charlton seniors, and the Taste of the Towns is one of the major, probably the major fundraising event of the year. So I just want to put in a little extra plug for it. And if you see any of the people from Rays out at Ted's or anywhere selling calendars or tickets, even if you can't do a ticket or a calendar, if you can throw $1 in, every bit helps. Thank you.
It's a great organization and a great event, so highly recommend it. Are there any other announcements? Is there anyone here for open forum? Sir?
Stephen Sage, 41 Lincoln Point Road, Charlton, Massachusetts. May I address the audience?
You may.
It says the chair has to acknowledge me. I read the instructions. Just a little brief history. I had actually three things I was going to cover. Because of the late start, I'm going to only cover two. I'll be at your next meeting, cover the third. But at the fall town meeting, the non-union members received support for having longevity pay. And I believe it was at your last meeting, you folks discussed exactly when that longevity pay should be beginning, and you decided that it was going to be this current fiscal year. I'm not correct, correct me. And then it was stated that there's finally parity for the employees of town, all having longevity pay. And parity, from the definition in Webster's, talks about it being equality. And I'd like to bring up the fact that there isn't really not complete parity at this moment. The fire department, the police department, the highway department, and now the non-union members all have their longevity pay starting at 10 years. What used to be called the secretarial union of a small handful of employees in town, they apparently have to wait till 15 years to be considered longevity. And to me, that is a clear case of injustice toward a small group of employees in town. I was told that, well, they just have better negotiators as, union members as opposed to the secretarial union. And to me, actually, it says that we had a breakdown in the negotiations based upon the selectmen's side in negotiating with the union, the secretariat union. If everybody starts at 10 years, it should have been offered that the secretarial union also starts at 10 years so that everybody really is in this community at parity. Right now, there's a small class of people that apparently are not as valuable as far as their long-term commitment to this town as everybody else. And I think it should be corrected. I don't think it needs to be a negotiated thing. I think you should be able to go right to the union representatives and say, we made an error in the way you were treated, and instead of starting at 15 years, we would like to start you, like everybody else, at 10 years. I'm concerned that a small class of individuals who are also probably the lowest paid people, employees of this town, are being treated not equally to everybody else. And I would request that you repair that injustice.
Thank you, Mr. Sage. Is there any questions? No. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much.
The other thing is the holiday concert was on Sunday at the library. Very well turned out. I was getting concerned with overcapacity, but there was an influx and outflux of, especially when the kids were done. We had representatives from Shepherd Hill Regional High School, the Mystique group, singing first, and then we had the Charlton Middle School choir of 6th graders singing, and then there were a couple soloists that was kind of new. I don't think we've had soloists before. It was mostly choirs, and they were really excellent. And then we had 2 church choirs in the evening. And then ex-chief purveyor, Jim, and I closed the place up. And Jim pointed out that he's no longer an employee of Charlton. He is a resident of Spencer, yet he came down and put out all the decorations on the common, organized the entire show, provided the sound system, his sound system, and he commented that he's not sure he can do that in the future, and suggested that perhaps a committee of people get together and put it together. I mean, he would probably be more than willing, I bet, to be a member of that committee, but he really did not have his usual assistance that he's had when he was chief. And I'm concerned that this might be the last year that that presentation around this time of year may never happen again. And so I throw that out to you to think about, and then maybe sometime in the summer might be the time to start finding people. Don't look at me, I'm willing to open up the library and put up chairs and manage people, but I can't be part of that committee.
Well, thank you for that idea. I think it's something that's
it's Chief's
definitely
idea.
worth looking into.
And
Thank you.
Might I just say that I was there on Sunday, and the concert was lovely, and the organization was fantastic, and the display on the town green is just wonderful, and you all did just a tremendous job. Thank you for that.
I didn't do that.
Well, thank you for putting up the chairs and opening the doors.
I did the library end of things as a library trustee.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sage.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for open forum? Seeing no one, we'll move on. Oh, sir? Nope, false alarm. Is there anyone else here for open forum? Seeing none, we'll move on to appointments and resignations. Our only item is an appointment for the Civilian Traffic Commission. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. At the board's October 10th meeting, you formed the Civilian Traffic Commission, which will consist of 5 members plus 1 alternate member. Chief Maxfield will be a sustaining member. David Smolsky and Richard McGrath were appointed at your meeting on November 7th, and at your November 21st meeting, Dick Vaughn was appointed. Attached are talent bank forms from William Plant and Sean Baxter seeking to be appointed to the commission. Both would be excellent members of the commission. I would recommend that Mr. Plant be appointed to the full seat, given we received his letter of interest on November 20th, and recommend Mr. Baxter to fill the alternate seat, given we received his form on November 28th. The alternate generally is always a voting member because, in general, no one will make every meeting. So should the board make this appointment, the commission will be full. What's the board's wishes?
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are these board's wishes with the appointments of Mr. Plant and Mr. Baxter?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
So moved. How's that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. I look forward to, it's great to see a full committee now, and I look forward to what they can bring forward for recommendations.
Are they here?
With that, we are just on time for our 6:45 scheduled appointment with the fire department, the pinning of 2 new firefighters and 2 promoted captains. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Deputy Chief Knopf has asked for time on the agenda to allow the pinning of 2 new firefighters and 2 promoted captains.
Good evening, Deputy Chief. It's good to see you.
Good evening.
I'll
Thank
let you
for
take
having
over.
us. Before we get to the pinning ceremony, I'd like to, obviously with the board's approval, we'd like to acknowledge a group in town for their generosity. They were able to donate a mannequin for us, and I just want to have Captain Rob Barton come up and introduce.
Do you want me to make room for them to come in? They can come in.
There's a lot of them.
I know. This is space here.
Oh, and there it is.
One of the newest members.
There you go.
Already on IOD.
Laying down on the job.
Yeah.
Typical firefighter.
Go ahead, Rob, it's all yours.
All right. Good evening. I'll speak very briefly on this, and then I believe representatives from the Leo's Club will speak very quickly on this. In the fire department, I'm the training officer, and a lot of our training involves having to move around mannequins, and we didn't really have a mannequin for us to simulate moving either a firefighter or a civilian out of a building. So we were kind of hampered a lot of our trainings. We have a very small mannequin, weighs about 30 pounds, which really isn't realistic. So we were researching for mannequins, or I was researching for mannequins and trying to figure out which one could we get for the department. And unfortunately, they're pricey. They're about $900. And at the exact same moment as I'm looking for these things on the internet, I have two of my sons are in the Leo's Club. They start talking about trying to give back to the community and how can we do this and looking for ideas. So I threw this idea out to them, and their next meeting was, sure. And they agreed to purchase the mannequin. So the Leo's Club, all I know a little bit about it is they're a subsidiary of the Lions Club, and they teamed up with the Lions Club and they split the cost to buy us a $900 rescue mannequin in order for us to continue our training and become more proficient at our jobs. So I know Steve Coronis is here and Lisa
Over there.
Corville.
And Steve is here.
Those are the Leo's Club liaison. So if they want, I don't know if they want to say anything else.
Go ahead.
Please do. Sir?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Doucette. I'm with the Charlton Lions Club, and one of the great things that we've been able to do this year is have the great fortune of being able to sponsor the Charlton Leo's Club, which is a group of young men and ladies, 12 to 18, who support our group. As some of you may know, the Lions Club has been doing a lot of great things for the town for many, many years, and we're always looking for members, and you can send us an email at the charltonlions@gmail. But we're very, very excited about the opportunity. The Leos are dynamic, energetic, and get us old people up and moving again. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank the Leos for what they're doing and this opportunity that they brought to us, that we wholeheartedly endorsed and joined in with them to sponsor and buy the mannequin for the fire department. And I believe the president of the Leo's Club would like to say a few words.
Please do.
Possibly with a presentation of the check.
So, my name is Spencer Corville, and I think I speak for all of us when we say that we all respect the firefighters, and this mannequin is the least that we can do to help pay back to them, as they have a very dangerous job, and they're sometimes away from their families, and it's selfless, and it's for the kindness of others, and this mannequin is, I believe, a great way to give back to them for all that they've given to us. So we are giving them the check, and yeah, I hope they can put this mannequin to great use and maybe save some lives, and hopefully it all works out.
I just want to say how amazing it is that as soon as they mentioned that they had this need, that you all together immediately said, yes, let's make it happen. And it's just, it's humbling to know that, you know, fire department that works as hard as it does, and the community members who care as much as they do is the perfect partnership. And
It was an easy answer. It was, like, his boys popped up and just brought the idea to a meeting. We immediately thought it was a great idea. We're a young club. We only started in April.
oh, wow.
For the Leos. Graciously sponsored by the Charlton Lions Club, which gave us seed money. Now we've got, the boys and girls have raised about $3,000. We're looking to give it back. We start with zero, we end with zero. This is a way to kind of kick that off. We're always open to new members. We have just 3 very simple Leos things that are open to all kids from Charlton and Dudley, 12 to 18. Good moral character. They have to keep their grades up. And they have, number one, they have to have just an inburning desire to give back to the community.
And I think that
And
shows.
we have that.
Yeah.
Yes. And every single one of these kids are just the best.
It's very humbling to see this, and I just want to thank everyone involved, the Leos, the Lions, everyone who, you know, put the time, effort, money, dedication, and thank you.
Yeah, and they don't have to carry Rob around now.
My only question now is, what's their name?
At the meeting, we presented this mannequin to the Leos Club at one of their meetings so they could see it. We put our Charlton patch on the left side, where it normally is, and then on the right side where we normally put the American flag, we put the Lions Club and the Leos patch over there, so that we always remember who actually donated to us. So the kids actually said, can we name them? And we said, sure, you can name them, and you guys named them? Leo. Leo. Now say, hey, we're gonna go train with Leo today. It's already stuck, so he has a name.
So I just, you know, I know that this tool will help make a lasting impact in the fire department, and I know it not be able to train with a real, you know, real life analog, you know, this will save lives.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
I would, at the least, Ms. Craver, write a letter of thanks to everyone involved with this.
How much does the mannequin weigh? 110 pounds? Yes.
Well, they're definitely glad they're carrying that Rob around.
Yes.
Well, I hope they become a more permanent fixture at our
And
meetings.
it's right behind
What a
me.
great bunch of kids.
Absolutely, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's heartwarming.
It's good. That's the kind of stuff we like.
Yeah. So, again, a big thanks, and,
Great contribution from
yeah,
those
yeah.
individuals.
just how quick it was. Mr. Swenson?
Just a very, very quick comment. All the years I've been in this board, we always talk about how to get more citizen engagement and citizen involvement in town and in government and in town in general. And that's one of the big answers right there, with
That's where
something
to
like the
start.
Leos Club. Start them, get them involved at that age, doing good work, and see the value and the pride and the good feelings you can take and give them back to your community.
And it really makes a difference. Like, that's what makes Charlton the way it is that dedication. Ms. Noble?
Just to add to that, we had the Leos here, we have the Boy Scouts here tonight, we have our student select person. I think that our goal of getting the youth of Charlton more involved is well on its way. I'm so proud and happy to see everybody here tonight.
It's you know, a goal that will, you know, always need to be striving for, but, you know, at least it's good that people are starting to care.
Yep.
So thank you for caring. But Deputy Chief, I'll hand it over to you to talk
Well-
about some more good news.
What seems to be a pretty common occurrence in the fire department recently, we are here tonight to pin 2 new captains and 2 new firefighters. So at this time, I'm going to ask we'll start with Captain Brian Oled.
Say, well,
Do we-
emotions, but he's got 2 new firefighters too. On the left. We have 1 retire, move up. Maybe 1 opening, here's the other one.
Should have practiced on the name.
It might still be here.
Thank you.
Next, Captain Mike Bjorn.
Yeah, I'm wondering. What the hell is there? We're bringing in 2 new firefighters. We're gonna lose 1. We're gonna lose somebody else.
our newest firefighters who actually started his orientation on Monday, Chris Trainer.
God, he looks like a kid. Damn it.
As long as there's no blood, we're all set. Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations, Chris. Welcome aboard. Congratulations.
This is a good thing.
And lastly, the gentleman who brought half of Southbridge with him. Firefighter Nick Quintero.
Yeah, he knows. 17.
If you can draw this crowd, you should come more often.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Welcome aboard.
Just a side note to Mr. Quintera's, he was pinned with badge number 17. His father in Southbridge was given badge number 17 when he started out, and his grandfather in the Southbridge Fire.
Wow.
Nice.
Very nice.
Nice.
I believe that's all the fire department has tonight.
Again,
enough.
Deputy Chief, I just want to thank you and all your staff who put this together and, you know, hired all these great talent. I can't wait to see where the fire department goes. Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair, I would just like to thank the deputy chief and the fire department for having Santa drive around on the tower truck through town on Sunday. It was well-received, and it was a good thing. Thank you very much.
Santa did enjoy himself, and he did book for next year as well, so. Thank you.
If I could also add
Ms. Kramer,
one
sure.
more piece. I want to thank the fire department for the royal send-off of our retired Chief Cloutier. It was very impressive that you took him home on his last day here in all of your fine bells and whistles and things. And it was a nice send-off. It was very classy. Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
did
much.
get a call from someone who lives off Bosgood Road concerned that there were so many fire trucks.
We did have people coming out to check.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you again. And congratulations, everyone.
You're going to go take a 2-minute break and go move your car?
Let's give them time to move their cars, and then, yes.
My brother-in-law,
This is the good part of the job.
his father was on the farm. His 2 sons were
Well, now that makes sense, because I'm looking out at Southbridge.
because my brother-in-law never retired to the youngest one.
Wait a couple seconds till things die down and
That's,
we'll continue on.
that's really impressive. Grandfather, father, son, all with the same badge number and same invocation.
I mean, also just all firefighters, that's amazing that you
Well, I was just telling Deb, my brother-in-law retired as a deputy chief. His father was on in Worcester and retired, now his 2 sons were on. So at one time, they had my brother-in-law and the 2 boys were on all at once.
It's hereditary.
Yeah, it's a great job.
So what do you think?
It is a great job.
Yes, she's coming in, she's peeking now.
Should we quick? And then we
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was just peeking in, she's coming in.
Right, that should be quick.
That should be very
And then
quick.
we're just declaring surplus, right?
That's it.
That should be quick.
Those two should go
And by the
quick.
time they're done,
Yeah, the-
hopefully. Oh, they're gone.
What you look like you have left is
That was, they did
the
it.
Gulfwood Road.
But once they all get out.
I took some pictures.
Now the second crowd files in.
He's right here, Joe.
You
Joe,
guys do good for the road.
She's in there.
she made it through the crowd.
Perfect timing.
They had you pinned on your office over there.
Honestly, I've lost my voice. I've had no voice.
Okay, Ms. LaCroix. We will now move on to onto new business. Item number 1 under new business is the town clerk for the new voting equipment. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. The town clerk, Karen LaCroix, would like to order new voting machines as soon as possible. As you remember, town meeting approved $25,000. After speaking to the rep from LHS and the State Elections Division, she learned that the Board of Selectmen needs to vote to discontinue the use of the AccuVote and commence using with the ICP machines as of April 2018 election. After the vote by the Board of Selectmen, she would need to let them know within 5 days. She is here tonight requesting that the board approve the following vote, and you have that there.
Thank you, Ms. LaCroix. Can you just give a little background on the changes from the LHS to the ICPs?
It's still LHS, this is the company that we're purchasing them
Mhm.
from. They're just updated, the other ones are 20-something years old.
Oh, wow.
So I did go to a demonstration, and they're just a lot more accurate, and the thing that everybody's getting into. And the old ones, they're not making anymore. So any parts that break, they can't fix them, so.
Great.
So the money's been approved, so just kind of waiting for me to purchase them. And then I did find out that they need to have, the state needs approval, it's 120 days, I think, so that they know that we're switching.
Sounds good. Mr. Swenson?
Karen, is this the same type of machine, or will it still be a paper ballot type machine?
It
where
is,
people vote?
everything's pretty much the same, the
So if we
boxes.
vote, the process will still be the same?
Yep, and the boxes they're in are bigger, they can hold more ballots, so on a presidential election, we don't have to, take them out in the middle of the day. I think they hold 4,000 ballots each box.
Really?
And they definitely are more electronic, they tell you exactly what the problem is, if there's something jammed, so definitely more user-friendly. And when you purchase them, they'll do training, they'll train us internally, they'll train poll workers, and they'll be there the whole day for the first election. So that's why I figured we'll do it in May. If we end up doing another election before that, we'll still be using the old ones.
Perfect. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the, go ahead, Rick.
Mr. Swenson?
No.
Yeah, well, I'm fine. I would make I move to discontinue using AccuVote ballot scanning and tabulation voting equipment, and to authorize the town clerk to purchase ImageCast scanning and tabulation voting equipment, and to use the ImageCast voting equipment commencing with the May 5th, 2018 annual local election, and all elections and primaries, federal, state, local, from that date forward.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, great,
Chair votes aye,
thank you.
motion passes.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing this to our attention as well.
Night,
Take care.
See you, Karen.
Item number 2 under new business is surplus equipment for the highway department. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Highway Superintendent Foskett asking the board to declare the following gas tank and pump as surplus due to them being in very poor condition. It's a Granby steel diesel tank, 10 gauge, with gas buoy and electric pump, 1/3 horsepower. I would recommend the board approve the request.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second. Motion and second to declare surplus. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I'll bring it back.
Yep, absolutely. We will now move on to old business. First item under old business is the Gulfwood Road update. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a report completed by McClure Engineering, commissioned by the Highway Department to review the town's options regarding reconstructing Gulfwood Road. Superintendent Foskett and a representative from McClure are here tonight, as well as Todd Gerard, our conservation agent. Superintendent Foskett states in a memo that there were 3 options considered for the repair and/or reconstruction of a portion of Gulfwood Road. The preliminary design and cost estimates were completed based on this evaluation. These are some of the issues that will need to be addressed if the project is to move forward. One, the water level must be lowered to 2 to 3 feet and maintained. This would require removal of the beavers as well as the existing dams. An annual inspection and removal of beavers is likely to be required, and the ability to obtain a trapping permit for the beavers from the town of Southbridge must be assured, or I feel this project should not proceed, was from Mr. Foskett. Replication of the wetlands will be required for any of these options. It is likely that there is insufficient land or easement for this purpose. Land procurement for the purpose may be necessary. Some roadbed failures should be expected due to the weak soil conditions that underlie the road, and an environmental assessment must be completed prior to the design.
Thank you, Ms. Graber, thank you, Mr. Gerard, thank you, Mr. McClure, and thank you, Superintendent Foskett, for coming out tonight. Mr. Foskett, if you can just maybe, just a quick summary, just to catch everyone up
All right.
on where we're currently at.
Basically, we're at the stage of this project where I needed to have an evaluation done by an engineering firm that understood the project. That's been completed. This is basically the memo that I've given to Robin, just highlighted some of the problems that we're gonna have if we move forward. But she didn't get to the second page of it. I think if you wanted to jump to the second page, that's really where we should be starting. I think at the bottom, the last thing I put are the options and the costs. The costs,
Actually, what they have here is my memo, what I read, and then
Yeah, we don't have a second page.
oh, okay.
so the
Well, all right,
next to
she,
the last page.
So I think it's page 3 out of 5 for us.
no, 4 or 5.
4, I think.
4 or 5. Sure. Oh, you're talking about the,
spreadsheet.
They're working on the report.
they're working on something, you just
Let me call it.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, regardless. All right, if you wanted to look at this page 4 and 5 on the report, it does give 3 options that were explored and laid out. It's all preliminary, you have to understand that. But the biggest, the issue here is the cost. They're way, way higher than I expected them to be as far as falling within the Chapter 90 spending. The problems that we would run into, because it is a Chapter 90 project or otherwise a state-funded project, if you've read through this, it does create many more problems.
And just to let everyone know, the 3 options range from about $500,000 to $900,000.
That's correct. And number preliminary and probably conservative. That's the important thing to look at. The start of this process, the first thing we needed done was to get a beaver trapping permit for this project. That's been the highlight of our life for the last year and a half, 2 years. If I gave Todd the microphone for a minute, he'd lay out kind of what we went through with that process and what we're dealing with the town of Southbridge for the permitting and removal of the dams. I think that's important in our discussion as far as where we're gonna go from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know
And
if you want to
Mr.
get-
Gerard, I know it's been a process, but if you can just speak briefly on that.
Yes, so trying to obtain, we have to obtain 2 permits. We did obtain the order of conditions to physically remove the dam and maintain an open waterway for 3 years. However, we were unable to obtain a trapping permit from the Board of Health to coincide with lowering the water.
That's the Board of Health of Southbridge.
The Board of Health in Southbridge, correct. So without the trapping permit, I utilized workforce from the Highway Department. You will not outwork beavers. Utilizing a full workforce, we were just barely able to dewater the site enough for McClure Engineering to come out and do these preliminary studies. If we can't obtain these trapping permits from the town of Southbridge, I'll never be able to dewater this site, and I won't be able to have a safe passage for this road no matter what we approve. It was very challenging working with another municipality, and I was a little,
Jaded?
Frustrated?
no, frustrated is a good word, just because they're not, other municipalities are not looking at the full picture. So to get one permit, it has to go hand in hand with the other. We can't trap in the middle of the winter and lower the water in the summer. So I need to trap in the summer when I'm lowering the water. If I can never achieve that, which right now it seems it's gonna be very challenging, I'll never be able to dewater the site enough for the rest of my team to take up to their level. I hope that explains the trouble I'm having with Southbridge Board of Health and their permitting.
Ms. Noble?
I understand your frustration. I'm rather dismayed at them as well, because I'm thinking about this in a public safety framework. They can't access the road.
Correct.
So it's a public safety issue. Should we be calling in members of the fire department or the police department to perhaps reach out to their peers in that town to, for lack of a better word, bridge that gap in understanding? Have we tried all options other than the Board of Health? Are there other options within the town of Southbridge to make them understand that it's a public safety and a public health issue?
So I started educating 18 months ago. I thought that might have worked with getting my people from the fire department, the ambulance service, things like this, showing that it's a ways to the Southbridge Hospital. It seemed that the people on the Board of Health were more concerned with their individual political protection of a beaver than opening the road for human safety.
Ms. McGrath, then Mr. Swenson?
Through the chair. Todd, is there any way we can go to the state about this?
We can appeal this. Now, we had a negative determination, so we could appeal it to the state and get a superseding order for that.
So that-
I've never done that.
I would, so my suggestion would be to inform both, or get comments from the Southbridge Police and Fire Department and from our fire department and police department as ammunition, and go to the state and ask for a superseding permit. Explain to them what the problem is, and we'll try and move it that way. If somebody's gonna put up a roadblock like that, then, and we've worked with them in a good faith method, and I know you've educated me, you know, on the beavers and how they work and what happens. You know, you've done pretty much everything you can, and my suggestion is let's go for a superseding order, and get it for as long as we're gonna need it.
If I could just add to that, gentleman. I think what everyone needs to understand is this trapping permit needs to be renewed annually.
Correct.
Without the assurance, and I've looked into it somewhat, but not every technical end of it, there's no assurance that Southbridge, even if somehow the state overruled them this year, that we would get that same overruling next year or the year after. It's a changing board. Every board member they've had 2 resignations from my understanding at the Board of Health, and a lot of it was to do to this situation. So no matter what we could do to make, if the state overrode it this year, we're still dealing with a major investment in an area that we all have to consider what we're doing down there, the money that we're gonna spend, and do we wanna put that kind of money into an area that there will be major doubt. I was in support of opening that road at the beginning of this project. I worked to that end. Everything I did was geared towards, let's get that road open some way. But when this report came out, reality struck. And it struck me as the highway superintendent that I have a responsibility to look at the overall condition of the roads in the whole town of Charlton, look at what our funding mechanisms are in our process. I guess this may be just short of the recommendation that maybe you'll ask me for, but you may take it as one because of the cost. And let's not fool anybody. These first 2 numbers that are low are not going to be a possibility. We're talking $1 million here. That's a fact. That's over 2 years of Chapter 90 road work that's not going to get done somewhere else in this town. It's my responsibility to point that part of it out. Yes, we had a problem with Southbridge with the permitting process.
I didn't appreciate the way they carried their end of it. I can tell you that the town of Southbridge has very little to do with money being involved in this project because their town line is not impacted anywhere near where we are. So we're not in a case where that $1 million, 300,000 is gonna be Southbridge. I just want everyone to understand, we're at 95% of that cost is on us.
Mr.
And
Swanson?
also, we got some major projects going on in this town now. And one of them, there is an unknown, it's the Potter Village Bridge project. That's an unknown for the Chapter 90 funds that I'm holding back now. So I just want to put that out there.
Mr. Swenson?
You made my first point, Jerry, in that, even if we were to get a superseding order, that's for this year. Even if we're willing to spend $1 million to fix this, I'm not willing to spend it, not knowing a year from now that it may be throwing it away. My only thought process on this would be, if we determine that, how many houses are impacted by this, do you know? Quite a few, is 6 or 20 or 50 or roughly, I'm not asking.
Anybody who lives in that neighborhood,
I get,
Southbridge Hospital real quick.
I'm just trying to get a rough idea, I don't know.
It really is more than just the Denfield Road. The fact is that if you can't have an easy access through there, I can tell you because I live there, right at top of the hill, sometimes in the winter you can't get up that hill.
Yeah, I've been,
And
yeah.
you're looking at it, there is some sort of problem where someone needs immediate access to a hospital. They have a huge detour they have to make to go around. I don't know what types of state money might be available for other things. That's one thing I would wonder is if there are other ways to get money from the state other than the normal ways we get for town roads to be fixed.
But my point was, I think the only way any of these options would make any sense if we could enter into an IMA with the town of Southbridge for long-term, some kind of a long-term intermunicipal agreement that would allow us to maintain the water level and the beaver population over a 20-year, 30-year, whatever that time period is.
Just a couple things. Ms. Kravick, can you answer that question of the IMA?
My understanding is that it's the Board of Health that grants the permit. So an IMA with the town manager or someone else, I don't think is going to.
Could we reach an IMA with the Board of Health?
They wouldn't grant it now. I don't see us getting a long-term one. I mean, I waited until they went through their process, and you had asked for something long-term. When they came back and changed their vote because they originally approved it and then came back and disapproved it, I did not go to the Board of Health to ask for an IMA because they were not approving it and they said they were not going to approve it. The town manager does not, in my opinion, have the ability to give something that has to, the authority lies with the Board of Health. So you also have a landowner over there that needs to give permission, which my understanding at this point is that he has been cooperative, or they have been cooperative.
We have someone that's
which is still an unknown.
We were at a point with the water IMA that we thought we were never going to get anywhere, and eventually it got done. It's just a thought. I can't see, we're impacting a number of residents in this community of being severely impacted by this. And as much as I am sympathetic to that, I just can't see how we can justify spending a penny if we're going to be throwing it away if we don't get another permit next year.
I know that this is an emotional issue, especially for the people who live there. We've certainly had a lot of support whenever we've talked about it and people have been here. My understanding is that it's 0.6 of a mile for the detour to not use that road. Is that true?
The detour is roughly a quarter of a mile longer.
Quarter of a mile
Quarter
longer.
of a mile longer than going straight down Denfield compared to, I'm not debating the fact that there's a hill on Denfield, there's curbs. The Southbridge side is terrible, but I suppose the Southbridge side
can't do
is
anything about
terrible on the
Southbridge's side.
Gulfwood Road too, so that's really not a debate. I have spoken with the chief, or the acting chief, I suppose is who he is today, and got his recommendation or his impact. And
And he says the impact is very minimal. He had the research done. The 7 calls were made down to that area in the last year. He doesn't feel that any of them were impacted by the detour being there, and in most cases, that is not the case.
Just a point of order, I know that there are parties interested in also speaking, so if you just please raise your hand, I'll ask you to come to the front if you have anything to say. And also, there's a question that was asked by Mr. Konopaki about other funding options. I know Chapter 90 is what we mostly get for, our road budget, besides whatever the town puts into it. There are other programs like the small bridge project, which helps towns pay for small bridges. But there's not really a lot of other mechanisms out there, especially something for $1 million for that size. I'm unaware for that. Mr. Singer?
I was thinking along the lines of both John and Rick of the IMA and John with the superseding order. No matter what, if we proceed or don't proceed, we still have to take steps to find out how far we can go. So I would like to at least pursue the superseding order. Can we get the state reps involved, state senators involved to go down to Southbridge as well? And I'm just throwing ideas out. And here's another one. Can we have those same state reps craft special legislation or legislation that would allow the state to withhold Chapter 90 monies from the town of Southbridge in cases like this? They are now impacting another community through political actions, not what's best actions. And if they're going to play politics, maybe there's something that the state can do, like we're not going to, obviously require legislation, but maybe they can put some law on the books that says, hey, guess what, Southbridge, you're going to play this game, we're going to withhold your Chapter 90 monies. Something. There must be something we can do or steps we can take. And get the state reps involved and state senators as well to go to Southbridge.
Mr. McGrath?
First of all, Jerry and Chris and Todd, thank you for the report. There's a lot of stuff to digest in here. As Jerry says, we're looking at large numbers, and we do have to weigh the return, on the investment that we're going to make, and how we're going to continuously make sure that we can keep the beavers under control. So one of my questions or even a suggestion is maybe, Todd, if we talk to the state about a superseding order and explain to them what the problem is and our fears that if we do this work, it's going to be $1 million investment for the town. And if in good faith we go to Southbridge next year and they say no, would the state give us another superseding order right away so that we can, what I'm saying, hey, would they tell us that they would give us a superseding order, based on the information that we have at hand? So I think that might be maybe a good way to start, and maybe we could look at the report and digest what we have in it. I don't think we're going to be able to make any decisions tonight on whether we move forward or not. And I understand Jerry's concerns. Chapter 90 money, you do a great job with it. You get a bang for the buck is phenomenal, Jerry.
Mr. Singer?
Just I know we talk about grant money, we talk about the state, what about federal? Can we get any money from federal grants for this? No. Again, I have no idea, I'm just asking. No?
We did look. We looked for different types of grants. We looked at, there's a hazard mitigation type grant, but the payoff has to exceed what the cost is to have the turnaround. And when we did the analysis, it did not meet that threshold.
Can I ask the question?
Ms. Noble?
Just for point of clarification, Todd. The issue with trapping the beavers is we trap them on the Charlton side, but we can't trap them on the Southbridge side?
Correct.
How far into Southbridge do you need to go for the trapping?
So the primary dams are located on the Southbridge town line, and for cost purposes, and to expedite the process, when we lower the water and breach the dam, they'll trap the beavers right on the dam. So that would be the best feasible method.
Right.
There are ways that they could try to lure the beavers out of Southbridge into Charlton with scent and things like this.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking.
Costs go very high, and probability of catching them goes lower.
Okay,
Um,
so it's not cost-effective.
Not very cost-effective. It's like trying to get you out of your normal routine. So beavers are they have a good routine. I
Right.
get up, I eat, I go fix my dam, I go back to bed. Why do I want to go to Charlton? So I know we got Treehouse Brewery and stuff like that. Maybe that'll bring them over.
Yeah.
I've been trying.
You have any tasty poplar?
So usually to lure them over, it's a lot more effort. I gotta get Malcolm Spiker out there, and it goes from about $100 a beaver to maybe up to $1,000 a beaver. So
That's why they're on the Southbridge side, and we just can't lure them out, and,
it's very hard to get them to come out of their prime habitat over to where less than prime habitat.
okay.
Mr. Swenson?
If I may, how far into Southbridge?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. How far? How much land? How many hundreds of feet?
A few hundred feet up to 1,000 feet.
Excuse me?
Some areas a few hundred feet up to 1,000 feet.
Up to 1,000?
So this is 1,000 feet through a wetland. This isn't like 1,000 feet of walking down Main Street.
No, I understand. I'm wondering
So
how
rough
much, how
terrain.
far in past the Southbridge town line, essentially?
About 1,000.
About
The
1,000
dam was
feet.
about
So
1,000
the
feet.
proposition of maybe buying some land from them to do that wouldn't probably be viable.
Probably not.
Eminent
Well,
domain.
that's all private property. to my
Oh, it's all
understanding.
private, it's not town property?
It's not
all
sound,
private.
it's just under the authority of the Board of Health in Southbridge.
Oh, okay, the issue is with the land itself,
It's
is
not
not private
Southbridge
land.
property.
It would be
Okay,
moving
okay.
boundary. is
That's
what
why,
it
as
Yeah.
Robin
Okay.
spoke, and it's a good point, and it's another obstacle every year that you'll have to overcome, is
Private is the-
you're
is the
dealing with private
landowners.
property owners that allow you to go in and do this. We were
Can you talk
lucky
to them
enough to
about
get,
seceding?
about what?
Seceding. They want to become Charlton residents.
A question I have is reoccurring costs. I know that there will be initial costs to perform the work of the rehab and the reconstruction, but continuing trapping, continuously dismantling the dams and other upkeep due to the location and nature of the road. Do you have any estimate on that would be as well?
Well, the major reoccurring cost would be the trapping and monitoring of the dams.
So it's
and the removal of, which would have to be done professionally.
Right, so it's not just a one and done thing.
It's not a
that
one and-
You can't
not
drop $1
even
million
close.
on it and it's fixed. It's something that's
And
continuously.
as that water rises, also keep in mind that the roadbed will be impacted by the water. The more we argue to try to get that permit. And we're already dealing in a very tough area as far as, McClure could speak to that. They actually spoke to it very well in their report. It's a major issue to think about, to put $1 million into a road. And I'll warn you now, go down there in 2 years after this work is done and there's cracks in the roads and there's there's sinkage in it, that's to be expected. So as far as the recurring cost, I couldn't tell you what the recurring cost is. I don't think there's an engineering firm out there. You can speak to it if you want, but they really concern themselves with the weight of the additional 2 feet of gravel. And the asphalt, as far as what it's gonna do to that peat and sand and that really
Right.
neutral material that's in there.
Which sounds like a continuous safety issue we have to be aware of as well.
I believe it would be. That would be my opinion, based on this report.
For the neighboring roads, what thought has been put into any upgrades to those to make things more safe, more passable?
From a highway perspective, I'd say this, that we could make improvements on Denfield Road. It depends how far you would want to go as far as widening. I believe it meets the specs of most town roads, secondary roads. The width is good. There may be some poor sight lines in places that could be improved, but I'd also warn people that go ahead and improve it because the cars are gonna go even faster. And that seems to be the real problem up there on that
Right.
road. I don't wanna speak for the residents. I've spoken to them many times, and that's what I gather. So an improvement to the road is really gonna exacerbate the problem that's already there. It's not gonna help it. I can tell you that the real issue is the town of Southbridge. Again, I'm gonna badmouth them, but it is what it is. Ellis Road is at the end of Denfield in the Southbridge end, and it narrows down to less than 2 vehicles wide for sure. It's terrible, I admit that. If these people are forced to go that way, that's a drawback of not opening Gulfwood. I agree with that. But Ellis Road's a private road, and I don't have to go on that issue very long on how much money we can spend on them. They're in the same boat over there. So, I mean, everywhere you look, there's a problem with this project. It's not just the trapping of the beavers. Financially, in a lot of ways, you could say you're throwing good money after bad down there.
Mr. McClure, thank you again for preparing this very comprehensive report. For long-term issues, how confident do you feel that even the deluxe option, to call it that, I would even say it's the bare minimum option.
Correct.
How confident are you in that it would last without significant upkeep?
I mean, as long as, again, keep that water level down. You've seen that road is actually up, you know, before this issue has come about, the road was in fairly decent shape. I mean, if you went off either side of it, you'd be in trouble. But the road base itself has been able to, and I don't know how much paving overlay you've done down in there, but overall, for a road that goes through the swamp, it has held up fairly decently. So I would expect if you were to upgrade that, you have the typical maintenance, but other than that, the road can keep the water level maintained 4 feet below the top of that grade at a minimum, and you'd be fine.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions, comments, or action the board would like to take?
Do you have any action items to go forward on this?
Seek state help, superseding orders.
I think superseding orders is just something to look into, but it's also the problem of the funding as well.
Right, but we still have to know, the funding's worthless if we can't get a superseding orders. We have to know if that's available. We have to at least ask.
It seems like, you know, as a town, in all towns in Massachusetts, we've been scraping, crying for more help from the state, for more assistance with our roads. And just getting, you know, what was promised for Chapter 90 funding has been a struggle the past couple of years. And, you know, the state has done good things with the small bridge projects that help communities desperate in needs. When you have suddenly $1 million bridge you have to fix, you know, that banks up the town. So
I'm not talking about mine, though.
It's for 10 days. So trapping permits last 10 days. Emergency trapping permits are only good for 10 days. So I would go to the state and give me a 10-day permit. If I hadn't accomplished it, I'd have to go through that whole process, go back to Southbridge, get denied, go back to the state, get another 10-day permit.
Governor was just in Worcester talking about 351 communities.
Mr. McGrath?
Chris, I was just looking at the borings.
Sure.
Peat, clay, sand, nothing really firm, huh?
No, I mean, under the night, we didn't do many borings. Well, we just took that one boring in the road base.
Yep.
And that, that showed that there was a good base, you know, sub-base underneath that roadway. At the time, we were concerned about getting guardrails along the side of the road.
Yeah, so you went to the side.
And determine whether we could actually put a standard guardrail in or dry pilings in, you know, 150 feet of that road base. You know, we would have to dry pilings because of the, that peat.
Yeah.
You know, Todd had told me it was 30 feet deep, and he was pretty close, about 20 feet, 28 feet, and so nothing there substantial.
Yeah, and I know that was our initial thing, maybe throw guardrails in there, and it would still be basically a seasonal road.
That would be my fear,
Yeah.
to come back to the same thing and try to explain why you spent $1 million.
And still end up with a seasonal road.
Just, you know, if there was a magical answer to the issues that we're dealing with down there, but it is what it is.
And the town recognizes how important it is to not only our safety officials, but the residents who live in and around that, and it affects you every day. That's why, you know, I commend these 3 men, plus everyone else who's been involved with this, for working diligently on this, and hopefully, you know, that's clear. And you know, I just do want to take the time to thank you again for putting everything together, for, you know, reaching out, you know, in some cases, hitting your head against the wall multiple times, hopefully, you know, trying to break through, but ultimately not in some cases.
So would you like time to be able to read and digest this and maybe put it back, continue it next at your next meeting.
Sir, if you could please come to the table, if one of you gentlemen could please allow him to sit down. No, please,
Yeah, just
speak into the mic, please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Jimmy Falzone. I live at 18 Denfield Road, and I appreciate everything Todd and Jerry has done for the past few years, trying to get this resolved. Also, you know, selectmen for trying to get this resolved, but I, along with about a dozen of the residents of Denfield, Gulfwood, and Ellis Road, have been to these meetings, have seen the struggles that they've gone through because the politics within the departments and how things don't get done. I hate to say this, there's a lot of beaver lobbyists in those departments, and they just, no matter, here's a guy with a master's degree, knows what he's talking about, and they're trying to contradict what he is saying. It's just mind-boggling. But to make a long story short, I understand what Jerry's trying to say, trying to do, but how can you put a price value on a human life and the safety of residents of these areas? It just, it's frustrating for me because it's been 3 years, going to almost 3 years now. We've gone to a lot of these meetings, trying to get resolved, and yet it's getting nothing but headaches, stress, the anxiety level. It's just so frustrating. It just, we need help above, you know, state rep, senator, like you people said, and just to get more politicians involved that have the power to do something about this, because internal politics is just not working. Okay, they're not listening to the people that know what they're talking about. And they're not listening to the residents. I don't know how many times we've gone to there, we've proved our point, but it's just in one ear and out the other. They just don't care. I'm not saying you people don't care, but something needs to be done. I mean, 3 years is a long time. Health and safety of the residents, that should be a #1 priority. I understand where Jerry's coming from, and this is a lot of money. But how I see it is, how do you put a dollar value on a human life?
Right.
That's where.
I completely understand where you're coming from, I understand your point, but from what we're hearing from our own, the people who've done research on the roads and our own emergency personnel, saying that it's not going to be significantly impacted.
Well, I live there, I don't know how many times, and my neighbors, people can tell you, they're afraid to go out to their mailboxes because people go flying by. When you got a school bus that comes through that road, one vehicle has to stop. I don't know how many times we've heard crash, mirrors hitting, breaking. It's granted, it may be within the limits, it's wide enough, but for these bigger vehicles that go by, it's an old country road. It wasn't designed for that heavy traffic, and it's affecting the neighborhoods. And it's scary, very scary. So, thank you. I get too emotional.
Thank you very much.
No, we understand.
That's why we're
I want to
continuing
thank
working
Jerry
on
and
this.
Todd because they really put their hearts and soul into this. I've been to the meetings where they,
That's okay.
and it's frustrating because I've seen the positions they've been put in.
Right.
And it's just, they're fighting, tooth and nail, trying to get this done, but we need more help.
Right. Mr. Swenson?
Thank you.
The only thing I would take a little exception to is we're not putting a price on human life and safety. If we knew that this project would be done for $1 million and the problem would be fixed, it'd be an entirely different discussion.
Right.
The problem is, we stand the risk of spending $1 million on this and in 2 or 3 years being right back where we started from and having these same discussions all over again. So the problem isn't an unwillingness to spend the money. The problem is that spending the money, from what we're being told, isn't going to give us a permanent solution.
Well, can't towns, I mean, I don't know, it's just.
I would love to sit down with Southbridge. That's why I'm suggesting putting a committee together.
Have we actually done that? Have the selectmen done that? Selectmen, have we actually done that? Sat down with Southbridge and say, hey, what's going on here? Why can't we get together? We're neighbors. I mean, why can't we work together to solve this? Because it's affecting a lot of people, not just Denfield, but Ellis and Gulfwood. I mean, we're looking at a lot of people.
Mr. McGrath?
So Jim, what happened is you have a separately elected board over there in the Board of Health, no more than ours. And you have people on that Board of Health who don't want to give you the permit. Unfortunately, it's the same thing here. Even though they have a town manager, city council type of government, the Board of Health holds all the cards. Okay?
That's not right.
But those are the facts. And that's why I asked Todd about, how do you go about getting a superseding order? And if we explain our plight to the state, will they continue to give us superseding orders? Todd says that we have to go through the whole circle all the time, every 10 days. Because you get an order for 10 days, and then that expires, and you go back over to the town of Southbridge, the Board of Health. If it's the same people, say, no, we're not going to give it to you. So there's several ways to do things. You can try and influence it politically on who gets elected to the Board of Health over in Southbridge through your friends and family over there. You can, or we can do the superseding order, but we need a guarantee that, as Rick said, that we're going, if we put $1 million in the road out there, that we're not going to be in the same position as we are, 3 years down the road. So.
And I think that's the next step, is to do our research and see what can we do at state level. Ask our reps and senators to ask how they can advocate for us.
Excuse me.
Well, hopefully,
Ms. Noble?
make it happen.
I want to sit and read this, because obviously you've come up with 3 different options, but at this point, it sounds like none of them are actually going to be viable until we address the water level issue. I don't want to spend $1 million and be back here in 3 years going, well, we spent $1 million, now we got to spend $1 million again. Are there any other, and I'm not an engineer, I'm just wondering, are there any other options for this road other than what we've described in this paper?
It's really, you can't build
Chris,
the
if you
road
can speak
away-
into the mic, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. You couldn't build this road base up any higher because of the impacts you're gonna have
Right.
widening the road, so.
So these are the options?
These are the options, yes.
Okay.
And if you look at page, 1 of 5, it's really where we bold and underline. We just
I
wanted
saw
to
that.
ensure that, that's the main point. Without that point taken, then just go back with this discussion.
Sir, if one of you could please allow Mr. Konopacki to take the mic, please. Say your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Don Konopacki, 15 Denfield Road. One question I have is, everything is talked about basically using the same road and just raising it. What about the possibility of putting a bridge across that? Is that something where we could possibly get money to have a raised roadway versus just throwing more dirt on top of a road? So, and would there be more money possibly available if a bridge was being built versus just trying to
Right.
redo?
Are there other,
dirt road?
that's what I was, thank you, that's what I was trying to ask. Are there other options other than what you've described in here?
Cost-effective options, no.
Okay.
These are the only cost-effective options, and I know we're talking about, $1 million, it doesn't seem cost-effective, but yeah, these are the, we're talking 30 feet of P, just to get pylons in, just in order to, where we evaluated putting posts in for guardrails, we're talking about having a pile driving machine in, and each one of those posts was gonna be $1,000. So just imagine trying to create that for a long-term, a bridge structure.
Well, I guess my question is, are there any other monies available if it was a project of that scope versus just taking a road and throwing dirt on top of it, making it larger? So are there, additional state monies that are available separate from the, what's it called, Chapter 90?
Captain.
Are there other I thought I heard something mentioned about a bridge, monies for bridges, and I suppose that's probably for bridge repair. But looking at something like this, it would seem to me that raising the level of the road isn't the solution. And I would think that it would also possibly circumvent, I don't know for sure, but maybe we'd be able to circumvent some of the problems of dealing with replication of wetland if you're building a bridge that's up and you have the same wetland there, then would that circumvent some of the problems of that?
Mr. McGrath?
You've probably answered both your questions yourself, but the first one is that the state money for small bridges is for repair. It's for failed bridges. We were very, very fortunate to get the grant for Potter Village Road, only because Jerry had done a lot of his homework beforehand, and when the grants came out, we were ready to go. The second thing is, the state looks at economic development for anything that they're doing with the high dollar value, and there is no economic development down there that would drive that.
If you look at Route 20, that's something where people are dying in that case, and it's been trying to pull teeth from a tiger, getting funding for that road. And that's something that's a state-owned road and something that, affects us, and I'm sure they get a call at least every day for an accident on that road, so.
Well, my car's been hit twice, and so luckily the other cars weren't going terribly quick, and it was just a little bump, but still the point is that it isn't really very safe for the neighborhood, and something needs to be done, whether it's increased patrolling or something. I don't know what can be done, but people do go upwards close to 45, 50 miles
Right.
hour down that road.
And we absolutely understand that. It's just something that we've been committed to with the new police chief, is addressing that and working with getting a better presence out there. And we have our new civilian traffic commission as well to be able to tackle those issues, because the only people in town facing those speeding, people are afraid to get their mail because people are going 60 on a back road. But we understand that it's your safety.
Are there times of the day when the traffic, excuse me, through the chair, is there times of the day when the traffic speeding is more of an issue? Is it an after-school, kids getting out of school type of thing, or?
No, it's throughout the day.
It is throughout the day.
It doesn't make a difference what time it is.
Definitely heavier during the commute hours.
During their normal commute hours?
Before school, after school.
Well,
But definitely during.
Jim, this is part of the point of this, is that it's not just the cars, it's every truck going at mankind up and down that road. 18-wheelers, dump trucks, fire trucks, oil trucks, boat trucks, garbage trucks, you name it. And they all come from Southbridge, and they all come down that road and they don't care. I almost got clipped by an Osterman propane truck doing 35 to 40 miles an hour over the top of the road just this week.
Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair, maybe we want to look in for the interim, look into posting it for local traffic only, no commercial vehicles. We'd have to.
Can't be done
That's what
in
we
my.
suggested 3 years ago, and it's.
What's the problem, Jerry?
Mr. Poskett?
Basically, the problem is they pay their road tax like everybody else. You want your heating oil tank filled, you're gonna, I've looked into that, John. And we can look into it again. I understand the thought behind it. It's a great idea. I live on another road similar, Carroll Hill Road is like the Mass
Big cut
Pike.
through, yeah.
It's crazy the speed they travel on that road, the trucks now with the heating season in, the heating oil trucks are one after another. I agree with everything they're saying. It's not particular to their own issue up there, but it is true. Maybe enforcement's one of the things, but I happen to know that they are picked up on that, and they're doing a lot better job on that.
Mr. Singer?
You can't do no commercial. What about tonnage restriction?
There's no bridge.
Yeah, you have to have a bridge, you have to have a bridge.
That'd be the only way you could.
You can't do it because of the narrowness and wideness of the roads?
Listen, I'm just offering what I've run into over the years. This isn't a new idea. This is something that's brought up every time there's an issue with heavy trucks. And that's what you're gonna get from the state if you start talking about closing it to certain weighted vehicles. Okay, what bridge can't take that? No bridge, no weight limit.
Sir, can
It's
you
not gonna happen.
please state your name and address for the record, please?
Bill Rowland, 8 Denfield Road, and I also would like to say thank you to all those who've put so much hard work into what you're trying to do. And we greatly appreciate it. My house sits directly below the hill coming from Southbridge Line. I can't back out of a driveway without a car being on top of me. I have a 17-year-old son who just got his license. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I'm shocked that I haven't been hit yet, just because they come over that top of the hill and it's blind. It's completely blind. And they come over the hill doing 40-plus miles an hour, and I'm the second driveway over the top of the hill. My daughter stands at the bus stop, and I make her stand further back because of the trucks. And the trucks are there during most of the business hours, and heavier traffic is there during drive time, so it never really goes away. And I don't know if there's some development up the road on the Southbridge side, but I've got massive tractor-trailer trucks going up the road now, too. Logging trucks, tractor-trailer trucks. It's gotten to the point where it's just one safety issue has now created a second safety issue. And that's been our conversation throughout this process, is that we can't neglect one for the other. Now, granted, understand this project on Gulfwood Road may not be feasible, but we have to, and if it is, maybe it's taking a long period of time, but we can't turn a blind eye to what's going on in the meantime while we're looking at this. And I know that the police force can only do so much, and I know that, monitoring can only do so much, but we should put some energies toward safety on the existing road while we're looking at this, because it's bad. There was an accident at the end of Denfield Road this past year, went straight down the end of the road into the woods. There's no publicity on that one whatsoever, but car was destroyed and it was gone very quickly the next day. I hope everybody was okay, but I don't know how that one turned out. But it's not a great road, winter or summer, and it's not built for the traffic and the size of the vehicles that are going down it. You literally have to pull into the gutter no matter whether it's a car or a truck when you're going down the road. So.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Or questions? Yeah, we'll ask to put this on the for next agenda. Will give us time to digest the report some more. We'll look into talking with the state to see what options and what kind of help we can get at that level. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poskett. We'll now move on to our second item under old business, the fire chief hiring process continued. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Fire Chief Charles Cloutier's last day was last week, and his official retirement date is January 10th. At your October 10th meeting, under old business, the minutes stated, the hiring process, Chairman Seferovich stated that the board has asked that the hiring process be added to this agenda so the board can begin to search for a new fire chief. The personnel bylaw states under section 220-5.6, recruitment, individuals shall be recruited from a geographical area as wide as is necessary to ensure obtaining qualified candidates, allowing for preference to residents if all considerations are equal. The official job notice vacancy shall be posted through the town administrator's office on the public bulletin board with the Charlton Town Hall for not less than 7 days, and shall be published in a newspaper of local circulation at least 7 days prior to the close of the period specified for submission of an application. Publishing requirements shall be waived if the position is to be filled by promotion of a present employee. And regarding promotions, any town employee may apply for any promotion posted under 220-5.6 above. Consideration will be given to knowledge, skills, experience, education, and seniority. The minutes go on to say, Mrs. Craver included the above passages for the board's review, as Chief Cloutier stated at your last meeting that the Deputy Chief, Edward Knopf, is ready to take the next step and would be an excellent fire chief for Charlton. She is also of the belief that Deputy Chief Knopf would be an excellent choice, thus would recommend that the board direct to post on the town clerk's bulletin within the Charlton Town Hall for 7 days to see if he will apply an interview. Then, if he does not meet the expectations, we will post in the newspaper. Also, you need to decide the review and interview process. Ms. Craver would recommend that the board set up an interview with Deputy Chief with the whole board. If you choose to go outside, have the HR director score the applications and present you the top 3 candidates for interview by the whole board. You would have time to review all the applications, see the scoring prior to setting up the final interviews. Certainly, there are many variations you could use, including a fire chief selection committee. Recommendations are geared for efficiency and process. Mr. Swenson agreed with Chief Cloutier and Ms. Craver that the Deputy Chief Knopf is ready to take the next step. Mr. Swenson made a motion that we direct the town administrator's office to post on the town clerk's bulletin board within the Charlton Town Hall for 7 days the position of fire chief. He strongly agrees with hiring from within, and it was seconded by Mr. McGrath. Mr. Singer agreed regarding Deputy Knopf, but he would caution against any impression of favoritism or automatic positions of hiring. It will be posted for internal candidates, which means an internal candidate can apply for this job. He pointed out that this position is not civil service. Mr. Swenson would encourage anyone interested to apply. Vote on the motion was the motion passed. You have two, that's the end of the minutes. Board, you have two internal candidates, Edward Knopf, Deputy Fire Chief, and Kurt Meskis, Charlton Call Assistant Fire Chief, both very dedicated to the Charlton Fire Department. Originally, it was suggested to ask the board to submit questions to HR and have Jessica compile a list of questions for both candidates tonight. Upon discussions with individual selectmen, it became clear that there was not a clear understanding as to how the board would proceed with hiring. As I stated, you did vote to post the position internally, but did not discuss what your next steps for interviewing if there was more than one candidate. That is the purpose of tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Yeah, as we try to set up this meeting, you know, the original plan was to invite both very qualified candidates, and we'd ask them questions as we did with the police chief. And upon talking with the selectmen, it felt like not everyone was on the same page. So that's why we're bringing it up tonight, and just want to make sure the board is doing what the board wants to do. So I open up for discussion. Mr. Singer?
I'd like to have an assessment center. It's a minimal cost for a long-term investment, investing in our personnel and who we think is going to hopefully be the right candidate and a long-term candidate for hopefully the next 10, 20, or 30 years as our fire chief. There's a big difference. We could use MMA again. But there's a big difference between the assessment center we had with the police, which was civil service. And in that assessment center, they could only give us scores, even though they had a wealth of information that they gathered from the assessment center. They couldn't give us the details. Fire is not civil service. So we can run basically a similar assessment center with MMA again. But because they're not civil service, this time MMA could give us all the information that they wrote up on each candidate. We don't have to go by scores. They can give us all the interviews, everything, and say, and here's our recommendations, and here's whys, the exceptions. All the data that was not available to us because police were civil service would be available to us for fire because they're not.
Are you, Mr. Singer, just to clarify, are you looking to go outside of the department or stay within the town?
I think we should have this assessment center as my primary or first choice, whether we go outside or not. You have multiple candidates. I don't think there's a person on this board who's done the job of a firefighter. The assessment center, I think, would help in that regard, and my alternative to that, I mentioned to Ms. Craver, was if we can't do an assessment center, perhaps we can get a panel of fire chiefs. John?
No, I'm just being facetious. You said nobody in the board's been a firefighter.
You were?
I have as an EMT also for 8 years.
Nobody but John was a firefighter. So only John can submit questions. But I think it would behoove us to have professionals who do that for a living. Score the candidates, whether they're internal or external. And if we can't go that route, I mean, yes, $10,000 is what we paid for police. I'm not sure if fire would be less because there's only 2 candidates. But for what we're going to pay a department head and make a long-term investment, I think it's a wise move to make. And as a plan B, if the board didn't want to go with the assessment center, I would like to at least throw out there, what if we bring in a panel of nearby fire chiefs, Mr. Coleman and others who do the job, who are chiefs, that know more about what to ask these people and make recommendations than we do. And they can make recommendations to the board in place of the assessment center. And then we can, after those steps, if we want, interview the candidates ourselves. But I think there are more highly qualified people to do an assessment than us.
Thank you. Any other comments or actions boards wish to take on this?
I would move that we hire an assessment center to pursue the chief hiring process.
My opinion, Dave, and you know you and I agree on a lot.
Is there a second on the motion?
No, well, not for me.
Thanks, John.
I want to explain why.
Before speaking on it, I would like to see if we have a second. I see no second.
Okay.
I'll open the floor up to discussion. Mr. McGrath?
Just, I think with two internal candidates, I don't think an assessment center would really be worth doing. I think that if you want to go the route of having some outside fire chiefs do a professional interview on them, on the job, you know, on the specifics of the job, maybe that would be the way to go. But my personal opinion is, I think that given the two candidates that we have, I think that if we give Jessica the questions that we want to ask, I think that we as a board can make a decision on this. You know, we did what we wanted. We put it, we posted it. We had two candidates that put their name in for it, and I think we as a board can interview.
Both are obviously high quality and have institutional knowledge of the department.
Excuse me.
Mr. Singer?
No, she can go first.
Ms. Noble?
Thank you. Quick question for point of clarification. Let's say we interview both candidates and we find both of them lacking in one regard or another. Can we then post more broadly?
I think that's within our powers.
Is that-
Ms. Kraber shaking her head, yes?
Okay. So perhaps at that point, we would discuss an assessment center. I do like the idea, though, of bringing in professionals, professional fire chiefs in other towns and finding out what questions they would ask. While I have a background in public safety, I do not have a background in fire safety. So I would be interested to find out what they ask when they're interviewing.
And I'm sure Ms. Lorenz could help us craft the questions, through our input, and possibly go find other chiefs' inputs as well. Yes? Probably. Mr. Swenson?
I agree with Mr. McGrath on that. I think they're two candidates. I think we can make a fair determination if those candidates are qualified or not qualified in an interview. And again, I agree, I believe we do have the ability to go outside if we're not satisfied with either of those candidates. And to that end, I would like to move that we task the town administrator with working with the HR director to develop a list of questions, appropriate questions for the interview of a fire chief, and then establish a date for us to interview those two that have applied for the position.
Is there a second?
No, through Chair, could I just ask Rick one question?
Sure.
Rick, does that include our questions going through the town
Yes,
administrator?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
that was it. So I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Open floor discussion. Mr. Singer?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I don't know what questions I could realistically ask, and I'll use Rob as an example. I don't do his job. I don't know what patch goes on what sleeve, so how am I supposed to ask an appropriate question of a potential fire chief candidate?
I would say
Well,
that...
I'm just saying, so
Right.
if we're gonna, my plan B, which John pointed out, and I pointed out from the very beginning, was if we can't do an assessment center, I'd like to bring in professional chiefs who do know what questions to ask, like Steve Coleman and others. At least have them give us appropriate questions. I can't give you one. Maybe Rob can, maybe the chief can, Chief Coleman and others, but I can't give you a question.
I think, just to give us some credit as a board, the questions we submitted and came up with for the police chief questionnaires, and you also
But
gave us
yes, I
some
did,
questions.
and those questions were nothing at all, even remotely close to the questions that were asked by the assessment center, who were trained in what they did and knew what questions to ask. Our questions were softballs. Mr. Coleman, Rob, and other firefighters know the tough questions to ask to get the real answers out of them that we need to know.
Mr. Swenson, then Ms. Kraber?
I think our questions would tend to be more, at least I know mine would tend to be more on management style and practices and that type of thing, as opposed to the mechanics of firefighting and leading a fire department. I would certainly think, one of the things that could be done is maybe some outreach to the firefighting academy out in Stowe and other chiefs and whoever to get some input as well. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Mr. Coleman. My concern, he may be a little too close to this department to be completely objective, and I don't offer that as a criticism of him at all, but.
I'm just asking for his questions, not for him to do the interview.
No, I understand, but I think there are sources. We have the State Firefighting Academy right out in Stowe. I think with them and.
So can we make would you be willing to amend your motion to have them compile questions?
You can just direct us.
Well, I'd like to have those questions gotten from whether it's the fire academy
Right,
or
I think it's-
outside.
I worded the motion to appropriate questions purposely to have to seek out questions that would be relevant to.
Okay, because you guys know I'll be the first one to publicly say these not appropriate questions. So I hope they're tough.
So one of the things we can do is at towns, I have a manager's list where we share questions and interview questions, and quite often, and actually I think I've seen one go through in the last couple of weeks with someone asking for questions for a fire chief. So I can put it out there. You brought up something that I thought was interesting that I think I would like to also do a little of, which would be to sit with the superiors in the department and just have a conversation with them on what they see, as issues with the department, and have Jessica attend that, and then we come out with some of the questions directly from some of their responses. So I think we could do a little work there also. So we'll come up with some of the questions that are pertinent to this department.
So it seems like when directing the town administrator and Ms. Lorenz to work on the questions, the input would come from our board within the fire department, and then also from higher up sources as the chiefs and the.
Yeah, like I said, I worded the motion to be relevant questions, so it'd be incumbent upon them to seek out sources that would help supply them with relevant questions for the position.
I think all three of those are good ideas.
Robin, it sounds like you're talking about a focus group almost?
Well, generally, if in non-civil service appointments of a fire chief or a police chief, I have sat with the superior officers and asked them for thoughts and just to get their idea of what's needed, what next to do. And a lot of one, they appreciate that we come down and ask for their input. And two, sometimes quite often we get a good sense of direction on what's happening in there and what the next person, qualities that might be important.
Okay.
And certainly questions.
And do they speak on condition of anonymity?
I've generally done it just as a kind of a round table, informal, we sit and just chat. How's things going?
But it wouldn't hurt to make yourself available one-on-one if anyone of the command staff felt, hey, here's some things you might want to consider privately.
I could do that, make that announcement at the end of that meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Can we have the motion again, just for clarification?
Mr. Swenson?
The motion was that the board direct the town administrator to work with the director of HR to develop a list of relevant questions for the position of fire chief and set a date to conduct those interviews.
Okay, thank you.
And that was your second? Yeah. All right, motion is second. Any last discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes.
This was John's second. You should.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you'll have a fair process when we're done, and we will aim for that.
We have some committee reports coming up in the future, but none tonight. Are there any, policy reviews rather, but are there any committee reports? Seeing none, Ms. Grondalski, it's time for your student select license report.
All right, so there's not a lot for the month of December, just a few things. On December 1st and 2nd, like I mentioned last week, we had the Holiday Spectacular Show, which was very successful. Friday night was a sellout, and Saturday only missed out on selling about 100 tickets, so it was really well attended. And then on the following Monday, the students performed for children aged K through 2nd grade on Monday during school hours. The various music groups in the school will continue to perform holiday numbers for area charities and town events for the month of December. The winter percussion and winter guard season starts today, and they're actually in rehearsal right now.
Good.
The National Honor Society just started their toy drive, which will be happening for 2 weeks. So they're accepting money and toy donations to donate to Toys for Tots for the holiday season. The second quarter progress reports, the grades closed last Friday, and the grades will be coming out this Friday. And recently, the school created a newspaper, which they have one advisor, but it's mainly run by students. There's a website, there's a Twitter page, and they print out copies and they post them along the hallways in school. So they cover like world stories, local, and school news. That's all.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you again for making those announcements at the top of the meeting. Are there any questions for our student select person?
No, the holiday show was awesome. That was fun. That was show choir, chorus, right? The a cappella group.
Does winter percussion have a full schedule?
Yes, they'll be rehearsing. I think their rehearsals are about 4 hours long, 4:30 to 8:30, once a week, and then they'll start competitions within the next month.
It's like a full-time job.
It is a full-time job. It's a great program.
And I'll tell you, you'll walk in
Keeps
there.
everybody busy during the winter.
The case with all the music trophies in there, it's just a testament to the music program over there. It's amazing.
Any other questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Craver, it's time for the town administrator's report.
Yes, sir. Secretary Ash visited Charlton to formally announce Charlton and Southbridge's MassWorks Grant Awards. Charlton received, as I informed you at the last meeting, $2.6 million to install a water line on Route 20 that would connect our existing water line to the Oxford water line. Both the town of Oxford and Aquarian Water Company provided support letters for the project, promising to provide water pending mutually accepted agreement. The presentation was attended by Senator Goby, Representative Durant, and Representative Frost. And I have a meeting set up with Aquarian. Peter Boyer and I will be going to have a conversation with them about next steps.
Oh, good.
Public Safety Building, the Public Safety Building Committee has identified 3 possible sites in the downtown area that might make a good site for a new building. They've contracted with Weston and Sampson's Jeff Alberti to perform a limited site suitability study, general conceptual design, and probable estimate, cost estimates. And we also received the MIPA for MIPA review in the office for Route 20, and I'll put that on your desk, so if you'd like to take a look at that.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Ms. Noble?
Wasn't Senator Fatman there as well?
Yes, I was just talking about our representatives.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Southbridge's Senator Fatman and Joe McKenna were also there, who are representatives from Southbridge.
Any other questions for the town administrator? Thank you, Ms. Graver. Is there any other business that was unnoted at the time of posting? Seeing none, what are these board wishes of entering executive session?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Number 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, fire department, IOD, and number 3, to discuss strategy with respects to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body regarding police, clerical, fire, highway union, Southbridge landfill litigation, IMA, Casella zoning appeal, the public body, appeal, if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect of the negotiating position of the public body.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. The chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and will be exiting executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in executive session at 8:18 p.m. Our next regular meeting will be December 19th. Have a great night.